finally the next day. Our primer has finally dried up, and now the last thing to do before painting this car is to sand it down. And for this case, or the places where we had to do some fixing, like this spot right here, this place right here, where we put our putty, surface isn't smooth enough. There could be left some waves, some little holes, some hills, which will smooth out by using sanding block. It's much better than doing it by hand, because it's usually a little bit faster, and it does job much more stably, effective and smooth. So it will be almost perfect for result, and nobody will even see that something has been fixed there. And additionally to that, usually these kind of buses especially are painted in two ways, using two different paint types. One is acrylic, where it's just the paint, which you doesn't need to cover up with this glassy coating. And the second type is your base coat, which covers up with, again, this photo. And the difference is in that, in one case, you can just go all prime details until the edges of where you want to paint it with 400 grit sandpaper, or in a station when you paint your car with a base paint, you need to sand it down, usually with sanding paper with the water, and it needs 1000 grit sandpaper, because those paints are very different. And if you leave marks, scratches from the 400 grit before base paint, it will be visible after painting. So everything should be done by the technology. As you can see, putting just a regular grey paint over our prime detail helps us a lot to see how much we need to sand it down. It's like for controlling measure safety. So you see that you have sanded it enough, and you can continue to the next details. Or not enough, so you sand a little bit more. While sanding your details, your parts of the car, you are watching that here this part is not at all sanded. Here you can see that there are little darker dots visible on this part, so you need to sand it a little bit more. Here there are almost no gray or black dots, so this part is almost ready for painting. At least in our case, I don't remember if I told you, we will still need to use 1000 grit sandpaper to smooth it a little bit even more, so even those little scratches 400 grit won't be visible. And one more thing, before I go to the next part. If you doing this in two steps, like I'm showing you right now, if you are sanding the detail at first with a 400 grit, later with 1000 grit, while sanding it with 400, you doesn't need to like 100% remove all those little dots. If you see that detail is correct, that everything is plus minus smooth without some inevenities, which I will try to show on some other parts if I will find them. So yeah, you doesn't need to sand it down 100% until the ideally smooth, clean surface, because sometimes the layer of primer is so thin so that you won't be able to carefully sand it down 100%, especially with those edges of the detail where it's the thinnest, and while trying to remove for 100% with rougher grit sandpaper, you can get through this priming layer, and underneath can be some empty metal or other layers, which is not great because when you send through the primer after painting the detail in those areas will be something strange. If you will look it up, there will be like a circles or something in the form of your sanded through place. So yeah, be careful and try not to sand down too much those little edges. So later it will be much harder to paint this detail beautifully. At this point of time you could have some questions about why I didn't put pulley over all the places which I sanded down to the metal. There was little bit of rust or some other defects. And to answer this question I will tell you this: the car was almost in a factory level of paint, so it wasn't too thick. And at first I done job of removing all excess paint with using sanding machine, which make a level change from empty metal to the paint very smooth. After that I added a first level of primer, which was for anti-corrosion, which already filled up or little hole which was made by using sanding machine, which I don't remember if I show you, but used a similar sanding block. And in this case I put even more primer or standard primer over the detail, and it will sand it even more and smooth it out even more, so it's almost invisible that there was some fixing made in there. So see how it's looking. Some mosquito died on our primer. In last days it's pretty warm outside. It's a little bit earlier there was a lot of rain, and even now there are thunders going all over us, and mosquitoes are everywhere, especially on countryside or even lakes. So the things that you should look for while sanding your details with a 400 grit is like spots like this one. With this gray paint shows that there was a little hole left there, which we have filled with our putty, but putty has this interesting phenomenon that it absorbs into him a little bit of primer. So in those places where you put putty, primer sinks a little bit deeper. So you need to sand it down a bit more. And by using sanding block, this job can be done in the most precise way, the most smooth way. So after, even if you see those little places, you can smooth it out, and after painting you won't see anything in there. So yeah, let's continue. And while trying to do this, try to make as even movements as possible. The best will be from one edge to the another edge. And after you've done in one direction, you can do a little bit in another direction, like this, or even this. So it will be a little bit more even and will look a little bit more beautiful after the painting. In a moment I will remove this film to sand out the edge of the primer. Those dots are almost come off. So a little bit of more sanding and it will be ready. So be careful, but at this moment when you try to remove all those little places, you can sand it through your primer and it won't be too good. Like almost now you can see that here and here is visible the layer underneath. So at this moment I will probably leave it as it is. The last thing is not too big, and after painting it probably won't be visible, and it even by hand is not so deep. The last thing to do is remove this dot from the mosquito. So I have sanded down all the places where I need with a sanding block with 400 grit, and all other places I can get which doesn't need so much of smoothing, where wasn't so big defects. We can sand down by using sanding machine. If you have very big surfaces, you can take, as I will do right now, 400 grit round sandpaper. It looks like this. In our case, red piece of paper with a little bit of sand, 400. I will sand down all the details a little bit and will finish it by using 800 grit. And all other details where I couldn't fit with a machine, I will do it by hands. There have passed some days already, and at this moment we already have painted the main part of the car, but there's still a little bit to do, and as you remember we have primed our bumper, doors, and in another room there is a bonnet from the car, which we will need today to sand down to make it ready for painting. And I won't show you already the part which already painted, but you will see in a moment after the whole car have been completed for better picture. And yeah, I hope that I will do the job in some hour because it's already late. The job has to be done until tomorrow, so tomorrow it can be painted. And yeah, let's continue. And by the time the weather is becoming worse, as you can maybe see, birds are flying pretty low, and in a moment maybe you will hear thunder. Oh, something is coming. So the rain finally come. Oh, pretty long. A little bit more and everything will start to fly apart. Well, rain is still going. It's a little bit more we have to do and then we can go home. Now the big parts are ready for painting, and the last bits to do are those little things, like these caps from the mirrors from outside, 2 pieces. There wasn't a lot of defects in the first place, but owner just wanted to make them both in a one color. And there's those little things which comes under the headlights and around the kidney grille, if I'm correct. They were a little rusty and we fixed and primed them. Now just there's left to wet sand them down, and that will be it. And for now that will be all. All details have been done. Primer has been sanded. Some were wet sanded. No, mostly wet sanded. Next step will be painting and putting all parts together. Those steps I will skip and show you in a moment how it will look in the end. So see ya in a moment.